Little girl interrupts robbery and helps injured man. She takes him to the hospital and is shocked when he reveals that, "Welcome to the channel. Enjoy the video, give it a like, subscribe, turn on notifications, comment and share." The crisp autumn air nipped at Sofia Martinez's cheeks as she pedaled her bicycle down the winding driveway of the Thompson estate. At 10 years old, she was small for her age, with a mop of curly brown hair that refused to stay in its ponytail. Her father, James, had always told her that her curious nature would lead her to great things, but today it was leading her straight into a mystery that would change her life forever. As the grandiose Thompson mansion came into view, Sofia couldn't help but feel a twinge of excitement. The sprawling property, with its manicured lawns and towering oak trees, had always fascinated her. Her parents worked for the Thompsons, her father as the groundskeeper and her mother as a housekeeper, which meant Sofia had grown up in the shadow of wealth and privilege. She hopped off her bike and leaned it against the gardener's shed, her eyes drawn to the flickering lights in the west wing of the house. It was unusual for that part of the mansion to be lit up at this hour. Sofia's curiosity got the better of her, and she crept closer, her sneakers crunching softly on the gravel path. As she neared the house, a muffled crash followed by hushed voices made her freeze in her tracks. Something was wrong, very wrong. Her heart racing, Sofia ducked behind a large hydrangea bush, peering out at the ornate French windows. What she saw made her blood run cold. Two figures dressed in black were inside the study, their faces obscured by masks. One was frantically rifling through drawers, while the other was stuffing items into a large duffel bag. Sofia's mind reeled. Burglars. She had to do something, but what could a 10-year-old girl do against grown men? Without thinking, Sofia let out a piercing scream. "Help, robbery! Someone call the police!" Her voice echoed across the quiet grounds, startling birds from nearby trees. The effect was instantaneous. The burglars inside froze for a split second before scrambling towards the window. Sofia's heart pounded in her chest as she watched them leap out and sprint across the lawn, disappearing into the growing darkness. Trembling, Sofia emerged from her hiding spot. She should run home and tell her parents, call the police, do something responsible. But a low groan from nearby stopped her in her tracks. Someone was hurt. Following the sound, Sofia rounded the corner of the house and gasped. There, sprawled on the ground and clutching his side, was a man she had never seen before. He was dressed in expensive-looking clothes, now stained with dirt and what looked horribly like blood. "Are you okay, mister?" Sofia asked, her voice quavering. The man's eyes flew open, revealing a startling blue gaze that seemed to pierce right through her. I need help," he managed to say through gritted teeth. "Please don't call the police, not yet." Sofia hesitated. Everything she had been taught told her to run and get an adult. But something in the man's pleading eyes made her pause. "I'm Sofia," she said, kneeling beside him. "What's your name?" "Michael," he replied, his breath coming in short gasps. "Michael Thompson." Sofia's eyes widened. Thompson, as in the family her parents worked for. But she had never seen this man before, and she thought she knew all the Thompsons. "We need to get you to a hospital," Sofia insisted, reaching for her phone. But Michael's hand shot out, grasping her wrist with surprising strength. "No hospitals," he wheezed. "Not safe. Please, there's a first aid kit in the kitchen. Can you get it?" Sofia nodded, her mind whirling with questions. As she ran to fetch the kit, she couldn't shake the feeling that she had stumbled into something much bigger than a simple robbery. When she returned with the first aid supplies, Michael had managed to prop himself up against the wall of the house. His face was pale, but his eyes were alert and wary. As Sofia helped him clean and bandage his wound, a nasty gash on his side. That looked like it came from a knife. He studied her face intently. "You're James and Isabella's daughter, aren't you?" he asked softly. Sofia nodded, surprised he knew her parents' names. "I've been away for a long time," Michael continued, wincing as Sofia applied antiseptic to his wound. "But I remember when your parents first started working here, you were just a baby then. Why haven't I seen you before?" Sofia couldn't help but ask. And why were those men trying to rob your house? Michael's face darkened. It's complicated, Sophia. There are things about my family, things I've only recently discovered myself. That's why I came back. But clearly someone doesn't want me here. Sophia's mind was buzzing with questions, but before she could ask any more, the sound of approaching sirens filled the air. Michael tensed, his eyes darting around nervously. Sophia, I need you to do something for me, he said urgently. I can't be found here, not like this. Can you help me get to the old boathouse by the lake? Please, it's important. Sophia hesitated. She knew she should wait for the police, tell them everything she had seen, but the desperation in Michael's eyes tugged at her heart. Against her better judgment, she nodded. With Sophia's help, Michael limped towards the small lake at the edge of the property. The old boathouse, rarely used these days, stood as a silent sentinel at the water's edge. As they made their way inside, Sophia could hear voices in the distance. Her parents, probably, alerted by the police sirens. Thank you, Sophia, Michael said as he eased himself onto an old chair. You've been incredibly brave, but I need you to do one more thing for me. Don't tell anyone you saw me tonight, not even your parents. Can you do that? Sophia bit her lip, torn between her instinct to trust this mysterious man and the voice in her head telling her to run and tell her parents everything. But why? She asked. Michael's eyes softened. Because sometimes, Sophia, the truth is a dangerous thing. And right now there are people who would do anything to keep certain truths hidden. I promise I'll explain everything soon. But for now I need you to keep this secret. Can you do that? Slowly, Sophia nodded. As she turned to leave, Michael called out one last time. Sophia, be careful, and thank you. As Sophia made her way back to the main house, her mind was a whirlwind of questions. Who was Michael Thompson really? What truths was he talking about? And why did he need to hide? The next few days passed in a blur of police interviews and hushed conversations. Sophia kept her promise, not telling anyone about Michael or the boathouse. But she couldn't shake the feeling that something big was about to happen. It was nearly a week later when Sophia overheard a conversation that made her blood run cold. She was helping her mother dust the library when Robert and Elizabeth Thompson, Michael's parents, entered the room, their voices low and urgent. We can't let him expose everything, Robert, Elizabeth hissed. Do you know what it would do to us, to the company? I know, Robert replied, his voice weary. But he's our son. We can't just... We have to do whatever it takes, Elizabeth cut him off. The Thompsons have worked too hard, for too many generations, to let it all crumble now. As their voices faded, Sophia's mind raced. What were they talking about? And why did it sound like they were planning something terrible? Over the next few days, Sophia noticed increased activity around the mansion. Strange men in suits came and went, holding hushed meetings with Robert Thompson. The atmosphere was tense, like the calm before a storm. It was on a chilly Saturday morning that everything came to a head. Sophia was helping her father rake leaves when a sleek black car pulled up the driveway. Her heart nearly stopped when she saw who stepped out. Michael Thompson, looking much healthier than the last time she had seen him, strode purposefully towards the main house. His face was set in grim determination, and in his hand he clutched a thick folder. As he passed by, Michael's eyes met Sophia's. He gave her a small, sad smile and a barely perceptible nod. In that moment, Sophia knew that whatever was about to happen would change everything. Unable to contain her curiosity, Sophia crept closer to the house, positioning herself near an open window where she could hear the conversation inside. What she heard made her gasp. It's over, Dad. Michael's voice rang out clear and firm. I have proof of everything. The embezzlement, the fraud, the offshore accounts. Grandpa didn't build this empire on hard work and innovation. He built it on lies and stolen money. You don't understand, son, Robert's voice was pleading. We've done so much good with that money. The charities, the scholarships. It doesn't. Make it right, Michael shouted. We've been living a lie, all of us, and it ends now. As the argument escalated, Sophia's mind reeled. The perfect philanthropic Thompson family she had grown up admiring was built on a foundation of lies. And crime? It seemed impossible to believe. Suddenly, a commotion from inside made Sophia jump. She heard a crash followed by Elizabeth's scream. Without thinking, Sophia burst through the front door, her heart pounding. The scene that greeted her was chaos. Robert Thompson lay on the floor, clutching his chest. Elizabeth was kneeling. Beside him, her face streaked with tears. And Michael stood frozen, the color drained from his face, the damning folder fallen at his feet. "Call an ambulance," Elizabeth screamed when she saw Sophia. As Sophia fumbled for her phone, her eyes locked with Michael's. In that moment, she saw a whirlwind of emotions, guilt, fear, but also a flicker of relief. As the sound of approaching sirens filled the air once again, Sophia realized that the truth Michael had fought so hard to reveal was finally coming to light. But at what cost? The next few hours passed in a blur of paramedics, police officers, and hushed conversations. Robert Thompson had suffered a heart attack, but was stable. As he was loaded into an ambulance, Sophia overheard a police officer talking to Michael. "Mr. Thompson, we're going to need you to come down to the station to answer some questions," the officer said gravely. Michael nodded, his shoulders slumped in resignation. As he was led away, Michael's eyes found Sophia once more. "Thank you," he mouthed silently, and Sophia knew he wasn't just talking about calling the ambulance. In the days that followed, the truth about the Thompson family exploded like a bombshell in the Chicago social scene. News reports talked about decades of financial fraud and how the family's philanthropic efforts were funded by ill-gotten gains. Sophia watched from the sidelines as her world turned upside down. The once bustling Thompson estate became eerily quiet, with only the occasional visit from stern-looking men in suits breaking the silence. Her parents, like the other staff members, were caught in a whirlwind of uncertainty, their futures suddenly as precarious as autumn leaves in the wind. One crisp morning, as Sophia helped her father clear fallen branches from the driveway, she couldn't hold back her questions any longer. "Dad," she began hesitantly, "what's going to happen to us now?" James Martinez paused, leaning on his rake as he considered his daughter's question. His weathered face, usually creased with laughter lines, now bore the weight of worry. "I don't know for sure, Mika," he said softly. "But whatever happens, we'll face it together as a family. That's what matters most." Sophia nodded, trying to draw strength from her father's words. But as she glanced back at the imposing mansion, she couldn't shake the feeling that this was only the beginning of a long and difficult journey. Later that afternoon, as Sophia was finishing her homework at the kitchen table, a knock at the door made her jump. Her mother, Isabella, wiped her hands on her apron and went to answer it. Sophia's heart raced when she heard a familiar voice. "Mrs. Martinez? I'm Detective Mark Wilson. I was hoping I could speak with your daughter, Sophia." Sophia's eyes widened as her mother ushered the detective into their modest living room. Detective Wilson was a tall man with kind eyes that seemed at odds with his stern expression. He knelt down to Sophia's eye level, his voice gentle as he spoke. "Hello, Sophia. I know this must be a confusing time for you," he said, "but I was hoping you might be able to help us understand what happened the night of the robbery. Did you see or hear anything unusual?" Sophia's mind raced. She thought of Michael, of the promise she'd made to keep his secret. But as she looked into the detective's eyes, she realized that sometimes keeping a secret could do more harm than good. Taking a deep breath, Sophia began to speak. She told Detective Wilson about the burglars she'd seen, about finding Michael injured in the garden. She hesitated only briefly before revealing how she'd helped him to the boathouse. As she spoke, Sophia could see her mother's eyes widening in shock. But the detective listened patiently, nodding encouragingly. "You've been very brave, Sophia," Detective Wilson said when she finished. "What you've told us helps fill in a lot of blanks. But I have to ask, why didn't you come forward with this information sooner?" Sophia bit her lip, her eyes downcast. "I promised Michael I wouldn't tell," she admitted. "He said the truth was dangerous, and I believed him." The detective's expression softened. "Sometimes adults make mistakes, Sophia, even when they're trying to do the right thing. But keeping secrets like this, it rarely helps in the long run. As Detective Wilson left, promising to be in touch if they needed any more information, Sophia felt a strange mix of relief and apprehension. She'd told the truth, but what would be the consequences? The answer came sooner than she expected. The very next day, as Sophia was walking home from school, a sleek black car pulled up beside her. The back window rolled down, revealing Michael Thompson's tired but determined face. "Sophia," he called softly, "can we talk?" Hesitantly, Sophia approached the car. Michael's eyes were bloodshot, his usually impeccable appearance disheveled. "I heard you spoke to the police," he said, his voice hoarse. "I want you to know you did the right thing." Sophia's eyebrows shot up in surprise. "You're not mad?" Michael shook his head, a sad smile playing on his lips. "No, I'm not mad. I put you in an impossible position, and I'm sorry for that. The truth is I was scared of what would happen when everything came to light, but keeping it all secret, that was wrong." As Michael spoke, Sophia noticed movement out of the corner of her eye. A woman was approaching, her face a mirror of Michael's. Same blue eyes, same determined set to her jaw. Michael followed Sophia's gaze and sighed. "Sophia, this is my sister, Amanda," he said. "She's been helping me gather evidence about our family's activities." Amanda gave Sophia a small wave. "Hello, Sophia. My brother's told me a lot about you. You're quite the brave young lady." Sophia felt her cheeks grow warm at the compliment. "What's going to happen now?" She couldn't help but ask. Michael and Amanda exchanged a look. "We're going to make things right," Michael said firmly. "It won't be easy and it might get messy, but it's time for the truth to come out, all of it." As the siblings drove away, Sophia stood on the sidewalk, her mind whirling. She had a feeling that things were about to change even more dramatically than they already had. Over the next few weeks, Sophia watched as the Thompson family's carefully constructed facade crumbled. News reports spoke of ongoing investigations, of frozen assets and potential criminal charges. The grand mansion that had once seemed like a fairy tale castle now stood silent and foreboding, its windows dark and uninviting. One evening, as Sophia sat with her parents watching the local news, a familiar face appeared on the screen. It was Michael Thompson, standing at a podium surrounded by flashing cameras and shouting reporters. "My family has lived a lie for generations." Michael's voice rang out clear and unwavering. "We've benefited from ill-gotten gains, hidden behind a veneer of philanthropy and respectability, but that ends now. I'm here to take responsibility for my family's actions and to do whatever I can to make amends." As Michael continued to speak, detailing the extent of the family's fraudulent activities and his plans to cooperate fully with authorities, Sophia felt a strange mix of emotions. Pride in Michael's bravery, sadness for the pain this would cause so many people, and a gnawing worry about what this meant for her own family's future. "Mom, Dad," she said quietly, as the news segment ended. "Are we going to be okay?" Isabella reached out, pulling Sophia into a tight hug. "Oh, mi amor," she murmured. "We may not have much money, but we have each other. And that makes us richer than the Thompsons ever were." James nodded in agreement, his strong hand resting on Sophia's shoulder. "Your mother's right. We'll figure this out together. And who knows, maybe this is an opportunity for a fresh start, for all of us." As the days turned into weeks, Sophia watched her parents navigate the uncertain waters of unemployment with a grace that amazed her. They tightened their belts, looked for new jobs, and never lost their optimism. Sophia found herself appreciating the small things more. Family dinners, game nights, the way her parents always made time to listen to her, no matter how busy or stressed they were. It was nearly 2 months after Michael's press conference when Sophia received an unexpected invitation. A letter, handwritten on expensive stationery, arrived at their small apartment. "Dear Sophia," it read, "your bravery and honesty have been a beacon of light in these dark times. I would be honored if you and your parents would join me for dinner this Saturday. There's something important I'd like to discuss with you all. Sincerely, Michael Thompson." Sophia's heart raced as she showed the letter to her parents. What could Michael possibly want to discuss? Saturday evening found the Martinez family dressed in their best clothes, standing nervously outside a modest but elegant restaurant in downtown Chicago. As they entered, Sophia immediately spotted Michael, sitting at a corner table, his sister Amanda beside him. Michael stood as they approached, a warm smile on his face. "Thank you for coming," he said, shaking James and Isabella's hands before turning to Sophia. "Especially you, Sophia. You've shown more integrity and courage than most adults I know." As they settled into their seats, Michael's expression grew serious. "I'll get right to the point," he said. "As part of my efforts to make amends for my family's actions, I've been looking for ways to help those who were indirectly affected by our fraud. That includes the loyal employees who lost their jobs when everything came to light." Sophia felt. Her parents stiffened beside her, but Michael held up a hand. "I'm not offering charity," he said quickly. "What I'm offering is an opportunity. I'm starting a new business, a legitimate one, focused on sustainable energy. And I'd like to offer you both positions." The shock on James and Isabella's faces mirrored what Sophia felt. "But why us?" James managed to ask. Michael's gaze softened. "Because you've shown incredible loyalty and work ethic over the years. Because you raised a daughter with the courage to do the right thing, even when it was hard. And because I believe in second chances, for all of us." As Michael laid out the details of his offer, good salaries, benefits, even assistance with housing closer to the new office, Sophia felt a weight lifting from her shoulders. She watched as hope bloomed in her parents' eyes, replacing the worry that had resided there for months. But Michael wasn't finished. Turning to Sophia, he said, "And for you, young lady, I have a special request. How would you like to be our company's first junior environmental consultant? Your insight and fresh perspective could be invaluable as we develop new green technologies." Sophia's jaw dropped. "Me? But I'm just a kid." Amanda laughed softly. "Her kid who showed more wisdom and courage than most adults. Sometimes, Sophia, the most important voices are the ones we least expect to hear." As the evening wore on, filled with laughter, tears, and plans for the future, Sophia felt a warmth spreading through her chest. The past few months had been a whirlwind of secrets, lies, and hard truths. But here, in this moment, she saw the possibility of something beautiful growing from the ashes of the Thompson family's fall. Looking around the table, at Michael, and Amanda's determined faces, at her parents' tearful smiles, Sophia realized that sometimes the end of one story is just the beginning of another. And this new chapter, it was full of hope, second chances, and the promise of a brighter tomorrow. As the seasons changed, so did the Martinez family's fortunes. Spring brought new beginnings in more ways than one. James and Isabella threw themselves into their new roles at Michael's sustainable energy company, their enthusiasm and work ethic quickly making them valuable team members. Sophia, true to her curious nature, embraced her position as junior environmental consultant with gusto, her young mind often providing fresh perspectives that the adult team members hadn't considered. The family moved into a comfortable apartment closer to the company's headquarters, a modest but significant upgrade from their previous home. Sophia's new room had a small balcony where she could tend to potted plants, a hobby she'd developed as part of her newfound interest in environmental science. One warm Saturday morning, as Sophia was watering her little urban garden, she heard a familiar voice calling from the street below. "Sophia! Hey, Sophia!" Leaning over the railing, she saw Michael Thompson waving up at her, a bright smile on his face. "Come on down," he called. "I've got a surprise for you and your parents." Intrigued, Sophia hurried downstairs, her parents following close behind. Michael was standing next to a shiny electric car, its sleek design drawing admiring glances from passers-by. "What do you think?" Michael asked, patting the car's hood proudly. "This is our company's latest prototype. We're calling it the Eco-Glide. I thought you all might like to take it for a spin." Sophia's eyes widened with excitement. She'd been following the development of this car closely, offering suggestions on eco-friendly materials for the interior and even helping design the logo. Seeing it in person, gleaming in the morning sun, was like a dream come true. As they piled into the car, Michael at the wheel, Sophia couldn't help but marvel at how much had changed in the past year. The man she'd once helped hide in a boathouse was now a mentor and friend, leading the charge towards a greener future. Their test drive took them through the bustling streets of Chicago and out towards the quieter suburbs. The car hummed softly, its electric engine a far cry from the rumbling gas guzzlers that still dominated the roads. "So, Sophia," Michael said as they cruised along a tree-lined avenue, "I hear you've been making quite an impression at school with your environmental projects." Sophia felt her cheeks warm at the praise. She'd thrown herself into her studies with renewed vigor, particularly in science classes where she could apply what she was learning from her work with Michael's company. "I just want to make a difference," she said softly. "After everything that happened, I realized how important it is to stand up for what's right, even when it's hard." Michael nodded, a hint of sadness crossing his face. "You're wise beyond your years, Sophia. I wish I'd had your courage when I was younger. Maybe things would have turned out differently." As they drove, Michael filled them in on the latest developments with his family. His father, Robert, was serving house arrest, his health too fragile for prison. Elizabeth, Michael's mother, had plea bargained for a lighter sentence in exchange for information about other corporate crimes. The once mighty Thompson empire had crumbled, but from its ashes, something new and potentially world-changing was rising. "It's not easy," Michael admitted as they turned back towards the city. "There are days when the guilt is overwhelming, but then I look at what we're building, the good we're doing. It helps, and a lot of that is thanks to you, Sophia. You showed me that it's never too late to do the right thing." As they pulled up in front of the Martinez's apartment building, Sophia felt a swell of emotion. The journey that had started with a frightening encounter in a moonlit garden had led to this moment. A moment full of hope and possibility. But life, Sophia was learning, is rarely simple, and the peace they'd found was about to be shaken once again. It started with whispers at school. Sophia would catch snippets of conversations that would abruptly stop when she approached. There were sidelong glances, muffled giggles, and an undercurrent of tension that she couldn't quite place. It all came to a head one afternoon in the school cafeteria. Sophia was sitting alone, poking at her lunch and mulling over a particularly tricky problem for her latest project at Michael's company. She was so lost in thought that she didn't notice the approach of Lily Chen, one of the most popular girls in her grade. "Is it true?" Lily's voice cut through Sophia's reverie like a knife. "Did your family really get rich by sucking up to criminals?" Sophia's head snapped up, her eyes wide with shock. "What? No, that's not true at all." But Lily wasn't alone. A group of students had gathered around, their faces a mix of curiosity and judgment. "Come on," another voice chimed in. "Everyone knows your parents work for Michael Thompson now, and he's like basically a mob boss or something." "That's not true," Sophia protested, her voice rising with anger and hurt. "Michael made mistakes, but he's trying to make things right. We're helping create clean energy, not whatever you think we're doing." But her words fell on deaf ears. The group around her erupted in jeers and taunts, the noise drawing the attention of a teacher, who quickly dispersed the crowd, but the damage was done. As Sophia sat there fighting back tears, she realized that the ripples from the Thompson scandal were still spreading, threatening to upset the new life her family had built. That evening, as Sophia picked at her dinner, her parents exchanged worried glances. "Mija," her mother said gently, "what's wrong? You've barely touched your food." Sophia took a deep breath, then poured out the whole story. The whispers, the confrontation in the cafeteria, the awful feeling of being judged for something she hadn't done. As she spoke, she saw her parents' expressions shift from concern to anger to sadness. "Oh, Sophia," her father said, reaching across the table to squeeze her hand, "I'm so sorry you're going through this. People can be cruel when they don't understand." "But why?" Sophia asked, her voice small. "We're doing good things now. Why can't they see that?" Her mother sighed, her eyes full of compassion. "Sometimes, mi amor, people find it easier to believe the worst than to accept that people can change. But we know the truth. We have to hold on to that." As they discussed how to handle the situation, talking to teachers, considering if Sophia should switch schools, there was a knock at the door. James went to answer it, returning moments later with a grim expression and a thick envelope in his hand. "It's from the district attorney's office," he said, his voice tight. They want Sophia to testify in the case against the Thompsons." The room fell silent, the weight of this new development settling over them like a heavy blanket. Sophia felt her heart racing. Testify in court? The very thought made her stomach churn. "We don't have to decide anything tonight," Isabella said, ever the voice of reason. "We'll talk to Michael, maybe get some legal advice. Whatever we do, we'll do it as a family." As Sophia lay in bed that night, sleep eluding her, she couldn't help but wonder if this was the price of doing the right thing. The jeers of her classmates echoed in her mind, mingling with the imagined stern faces of judges and lawyers. Was this what Michael had meant when he said the truth could be dangerous? But as she tossed and turned, another memory surfaced. The calf. Look on Michael's face when he'd unveiled the Eco-Glide, the pride in his voice when he talked about the company's mission, the way her parents' eyes lit up when they discussed their work, so different from the weariness she'd seen in them during their years at the Thompson estate. With a start, Sophia sat up in bed. She'd made a decision. If testifying could help ensure that justice was served, if it could help protect the new life they were building, then she would do it. It would be scary, yes, but hadn't she already faced down burglars and family secrets? Slipping out of bed, Sophia padded to her little balcony garden. In the moonlight, she could see the delicate leaves of her plants reaching towards the sky. They were small now, but with care and time, they would grow strong. Just like the truth, she realized. It might be fragile at first, but given the chance, it could flourish and change the world. As she stood there, the cool night air on her face, Sophia felt a sense of calm settle over her. Whatever challenges lay ahead, she would face them with the same courage and integrity that had guided her so far. After all, as her father always said, the Martinez family could weather any storm as long as they stood together. Little did Sophia know, as she finally drifted off to sleep, that the storm on the horizon was bigger than any of them could have imagined. The trial would not just be about the Thompsons' financial crimes. It would unearth secrets that had been buried for generations, secrets that would shake Chicago's elite to its core. And at the center of it all would be a brave young girl, armed with nothing but the truth and the unwavering support of her family. The stage was set for a battle that would test not just Sophia's courage, but the very foundations of justice and redemption. As dawn broke over the city, painting the sky in hues of hope, Sophia Martinez slept peacefully, unaware that she was about to become the key player in a drama that would captivate the entire nation. The weeks leading up to the trial were a whirlwind of preparation and mounting tension. Sophia found herself thrust into a world of legal jargon and courtroom procedures, spending hours with kindly but firm lawyers who helped her prepare her testimony. Her parents were constant pillars of support, but she could see the worry lines deepening on their faces with each passing day. Michael, too, was a frequent visitor to the Martinez home, often bringing updates on the case and offering words of encouragement. But even his usually confident demeanor seemed strained as the trial date loomed closer. "Remember, Sophia," he said one evening, his blue eyes serious as they sat in the family's small living room. "Just tell the truth. That's all anyone can ask of you." The morning of the trial dawned bright and clear, a stark contrast to the nervous energy thrumming through Sophia as she dressed in her best clothes, a simple blue dress her mother had bought specially for the occasion. As they drove to the courthouse, the Chicago skyline looming before them, Sophia felt as though she were heading into battle. The courthouse was the imposing structure of granite and marble, its steps crowded with reporters and curious onlookers. As the Martinez family made their way up the steps, flanked by their lawyer, Sophia felt the weight of countless eyes upon her. Whispers followed in their wake. "That's her, the girl who blew the whistle on the Thompsons." Inside, the courtroom, was a sea of dark suits and tense faces. Sophia's eyes were immediately drawn to the defendant's table, where Robert and Elizabeth Thompson sat, looking pale and diminished in their expensive attire. Michael sat behind them, his face a mask of grim determination. As the proceedings began, Sophia listened with growing amazement as the prosecution laid out its case. The financial crimes were just the tip of the iceberg. There were allegations of bribery reaching into the highest levels of Chicago politics, of environmental violations covered up for decades, of a family legacy built on exploitation and deceit. When it was finally Sophia's turn to testify, she felt as though her legs had turned to jelly. But as she took the stand, her eyes met her father's in the gallery. He gave her a small nod, and she felt a surge of strength. "Miss Martinez," the prosecutor began, his voice gentle but firm, "can you please tell the court what you witnessed on the night of September 15th last year?" Taking a deep breath, Sophia began her story. She recounted the burglars she'd seen, finding Michael injured in the garden, helping him to the boathouse. As she spoke, her voice grew stronger, more confident. This was her truth, and she would tell it. The defense attorney's cross-examination was grueling. He tried to paint Sophia as a confused child, manipulated by Michael for his own ends. But Sophia stood her ground, her responses clear and unwavering. "And why didn't you tell anyone about Mr. Thompson right away?" the attorney asked, his tone skeptical. Sophia paused, considering her words carefully. "Because he asked me not to," she said simply, "and because I believed he was scared and in trouble, I wanted to help." "So you admit to lying to the police initially?" Sophia felt a flash of shame, but pushed through it. "Yes," she admitted, "and I'm not proud of that, but I've told the whole truth now because it's the right thing to do." As she stepped down from the witness stand, Sophia caught sight of Elizabeth Thompson's face. The older woman's expression was a mix of anger and something else. Was it admiration? Before Sophia could ponder this, she was engulfed in her parents' embrace, their whispered words of pride washing over her. The trial stretched on for weeks, each day bringing new revelations and shocking testimonies. Sophia attended when she could, watching as former employees, business partners, and even some of Chicago's most prominent citizens took the stand. The picture that emerged was of a corruption so deeply rooted that it had become almost invisible, accepted as just the way things were done. But it was Elizabeth Thompson's testimony that truly turned the tide. In a move that stunned the courtroom, she took the stand and began to speak, her voice quavering at first but growing stronger with each word. "I can't do this anymore," she said, looking directly at her husband and son. "For generations we've told ourselves that the ends justified the means, that our philanthropy made up for our indiscretions. But sitting here, listening to that brave young girl," her eyes found Sophia in the gallery, "I realized that we've been living a lie, and it's time for it to end." What followed was a detailed account of the Thompson family's illicit activities, stretching back nearly a century. Elizabeth spoke of secret accounts, of deals made in smoke-filled rooms, of environmental reports buried, and whistleblowers silenced. As she talked, Sophia saw Robert Thompson seem to physically shrink in his chair, while Michael's face showed a complex mix of pain and relief. The courtroom was in an uproar, journalists scribbling furiously, spectators murmuring in shock. The judge had to call for order several times. When Elizabeth finally stepped down, the silence that followed was deafening. As the trial neared its conclusion, the mood in Chicago was electric. The Thompson case had become more than just a financial scandal. It had lifted the veil on decades of corruption that had shaped the city. People were angry, yes, but there was also a sense of catharsis, of a long-festering wound finally being cleaned. On the day of the verdict, the courthouse was surrounded by a sea of people. Some held signs demanding justice. Others wore T-shirts with Sophia's face and the words "Truth Teller" emblazoned across them. As the Martinez family made their way inside, they were met with cheers and words of support. The courtroom fell silent. As the jury foreman stood to deliver the verdict, guilty on all counts for Robert Thompson, a lesser sentence for Elizabeth in light of her cooperation. As the judge read out the sentences, hefty fines, prison terms, mandatory restitution, Sophia felt a complex swirl of emotions. There was relief, yes, but also sadness for the fall of a family that had once seemed larger than life. As the courtroom began to empty, Sophia felt a hand on her shoulder. She turned to find Michael standing there, his eyes red-rimmed but clear. "Thank you, Sophia," he said softly. "Your courage." It gave my mother the strength to do the right thing. You've changed more lives than you know." Before Sophia could respond, there was a commotion near the defendant's table. Elizabeth Thompson had broken away from her lawyers and was approaching them, her face tear-stained but determined. "Young lady," she said, her voice trembling slightly as she addressed Sophia, "I owe you an apology and a thank you. What you did, it's given our family a chance at redemption. It won't be easy, but it's a start." As they left the courthouse, stepping out into the bright Chicago afternoon, Sophia felt as though a weight had been lifted. The road ahead wouldn't be easy. There would be more questions, more scrutiny, the challenges of rebuilding trust. But as she looked at her parents, at Michael, at the crowd of people cheering for justice, she knew that they had taken the first step towards something better. That evening, as the Martinez family sat around their dinner table, the TV in the background still buzzing with news of the verdict, James raised his glass in a toast. "To Sophia," he said, his voice filled with pride, "who reminded us all that one person, no matter how young, can change the world if they're brave enough to speak the truth." As they clinked glasses, Sophia felt a warmth spreading through her chest. She thought of the small plants on her balcony, how they had grown and flourished despite the odds. Perhaps truth and justice were like that too, fragile at first, but with care and courage, capable of breaking through even the hardest ground. Later that night, as Sophia stood on her balcony looking out over the city lights, she reflected on the journey that had brought her here. From a curious girl stumbling upon a secret in a moonlit garden to a key figure in one of Chicago's biggest legal cases, it seemed almost unbelievable. But as she watched a shooting star streak across the sky, Sophia made a silent promise to herself. She would continue to stand up for what was right, to use her voice for those who couldn't speak for themselves. The Thompson case might be over, but she knew this was just the beginning of her journey. With a small smile, Sophia turned back to her room, ready to face whatever challenges tomorrow might bring. After all, she was Sophia Martinez, truth-teller, change-maker, and proof that even the smallest light can pierce the darkest shadows. 5 years had passed since the landmark Thompson trial, and Chicago had changed in ways both subtle and profound. The expose of long-standing corruption had sparked a wave of reforms, from stricter corporate oversight to a renewed focus on environmental protection. And at the heart of many of these changes was a now 15-year-old Sophia Martinez, whose courage had inspired a generation. On a warm spring morning, Sophia stood at the podium of her high school auditorium, addressing a crowd of eager faces. Her once unruly curls were now neatly pulled back, and she carried herself with a quiet confidence that belied her years. "When I was 10, she began, her voice clear and strong, "I made a choice that changed my life and the lives of many others. I chose to tell the truth, even when it was scary, even when it felt like the whole world was against me." The audience hung on her every word. Among them, Sophia could see her parents, their faces beaming with pride. Next to them sat Michael Thompson, who had become a staunch advocate for corporate responsibility and environmental causes after serving a brief sentence for his role in the family's crimes. But the real heroes of that story, Sophia continued, weren't just those of us in the courtroom. It was every person who chose to stand up against injustice, who demanded better from our leaders and from ourselves. It was the journalists who dug deeper, the lawyers who fought for what was right, and the ordinary citizens who refused to look the other way. As she spoke, Sophia reflected on the journey of the past 5 years. The months following the trial had been challenging. There were those who resented the changes brought about by the Thompson case, who saw Sophia and her family as troublemakers. But for every critic, there were dozens more who rallied around them, inspired by their story. Sophia had thrown herself into her studies with renewed vigor, particularly in environmental science and civic engagement. She'd started a youth activist group that had successfully lobbied for increased green spaces in underprivileged neighborhoods and pushed for more comprehensive recycling programs in schools. Her work hadn't gone unnoticed. Just last month, she'd received word that she'd been accepted to several top universities, all offering scholarships. The future stretched before her, bright with possibility. "But our work isn't done," Sophia said, her voice taking on a more serious tone. "The Thompson case showed us how deep corruption can run, how easy it is for people to look the other way when injustice doesn't directly affect them. It's up to all of us to remain vigilant, to speak up when we see wrong being done, no matter how small it might seem." As she concluded her speech to thunderous applause, Sophia caught her father's eye in the audience. He gave her a subtle thumbs up, and she felt a surge of gratitude for her parents' unwavering support throughout this journey. After the assembly, as students and teachers alike crowded around to congratulate her, Sophia felt a tap on her shoulder. She turned to find Amanda Thompson, Michael's sister, standing there with a warm smile. "That was quite a speech," Amanda said. "You know, when Michael first told me about the brave little girl who helped him that night, I never imagined the impact you'd have. You've done more than just expose one family's wrongdoings, you've sparked a movement." Sophia blushed at the praise. "I just did what I thought was right," she said modestly. Amanda's expression turned serious. "Listen, Sophia, I know you're heading off to college soon, but I have a proposition for you. The Thompson Foundation, the new one, focused on environmental restoration and corporate accountability, we're starting a summer internship program for high school students. We'd be honored if you'd consider being our first intern." Sophia's eyes widened in surprise. The Thompson Foundation had been making waves in the philanthropic world, working to undo the damage done by generations of corporate malfeasance. To be part of that work to help shape a better future. It was more than she'd ever dreamed of. I'd be honored," Sophia stammered, a grin spreading across her face. As Amanda walked away, promising to send more details soon, Sophia felt a familiar presence at her side. Michael Thompson stood there, his face etched with a mix of pride and something that looked almost like awe. "You continue to amaze me, Sophia," he said softly. "You know, there are days when the guilt of what my family did still weighs heavily on me. But then I see you, see the change you've inspired, and I'm reminded that it's never too late to make things right." Sophia nodded, understanding the weight of his words. "We all make mistakes, Mr. Thompson. What matters is what we do to fix them." As they walked out of the auditorium together, Sophia was struck by how much had changed. The man she'd once helped hide in a boathouse was now a respected advocate for change. The family that had once seemed untouchable had faced justice, but in doing so had found a path to redemption. That evening, as the Martinez family celebrated Sophia's speech and her new internship opportunity, there was a knock at the door. James answered it to find Detective Mark Wilson standing there, a small smile on his weathered face. "Sorry to interrupt," he said as he stepped inside. "But I thought Sophia might like to know. We've just closed the last of the cases stemming from the Thompson investigation. 5 years, dozens of convictions, and more reform bills than I can count. And it all started with one brave little girl." Sophia felt her cheeks warm at the praise, but there was also a sense of closure. The long shadow cast by the Thompson case was finally lifting, making way for a brighter future. As they sat around the dinner table, sharing stories and laughter, Sophia couldn't help but marvel at the twists and turns her life had taken. From a curious 10-year-old stumbling upon a secret to a young activist on the cusp of college, she had grown in ways she never could have imagined. Later that night, as she stood on her balcony gazing out at the Chicago skyline, Sophia reflected on the journey ahead. College, internships, and beyond. The possibilities seemed endless. But whatever path she chose, she knew she would carry with her the lessons learned from that fateful night 5 years ago. The truth she had discovered was both a burden and a gift. It could shake foundations and topple empires, but it could also heal wounds and build bridges. It required courage to speak and wisdom to wield, but its power to change the world was undeniable. As a cool breeze ruffled her hair, Sophia made a silent vow. She would continue to be a voice for truth, a champion for justice, and a force for positive change. The story that had begun with a whispered secret in a moonlit garden had blossomed into something far greater than she could have ever imagined. And as she turned to go back inside, Sophia knew that this was not an ending, but a beginning. The next chapter of her life was about to unfold, filled with new challenges, new opportunities, and the chance to make an even bigger difference in the world. For Sofia Martinez, truth-teller and changemaker, the greatest adventure was just beginning. And she was ready to face it head-on, armed with courage, compassion, and the unwavering belief that one person really could change the world. As she closed the balcony door behind her, Sofia smiled to herself. Whatever the future held, she knew she would face it with the same determination and integrity that had guided her this far. After all, as her father always said, a Martinez never backs down from a challenge. And with that thought, Sofia turned off her light and drifted off to sleep, dreaming of the bright future that lay ahead, a future she had helped shape with nothing more than her bravery and her commitment to the truth. In the years to come, Sofia's story would be told and retold, inspiring countless others to stand up for what's right, no matter the cost. And in the annals of Chicago's history, her name would be remembered not just as the girl who brought down the Thompsons, but as the spark that ignited a movement for transparency, accountability, and justice. The end of one chapter, but the beginning of so many more. For Sofia Martinez, the best was yet to come.